Hi, I'm your Gemini friend. This video is about Venus in Libra, which is a very natural place for Venus to be. Venus is in its domicile in Libra, since it rules Libra and Taurus. So if you're curious more about Venus, just what it represents within our charts, I do have a video in the description that goes more depth into Venus. And if you are curious about Venus in the houses, I do have several older videos that are all planets in each house, but this will be specifically about the placement Venus in the sign of Libra. So whether you have it or you're just curious, we're gonna get into it. So I want to mention I offer personal natal chart readings and synastry readings. If you're interested in that, there will be information in the description for that too. But let's get into this. I'm gonna start with the aesthetic material side, and then I'm gonna get into value and self-worth, because Venus shows us so much about what we value. Because Venus truly is ultimately about values and our values within ourselves. Because Venus truly is about our values externally and internally. Then I'll get into love and relationships, and at the end I'm gonna go through challenges and growth opportunities. Though those do tend to come out during the video, but if they come out as challenges, I'll try to make them growth opportunities by the end. So, aesthetic Venus in Libra. Libra is known for having good taste, high quality, attention to the quality specifically, and a very strong focus on balance, symmetry, what is naturally harmonious, or selecting things that work together. And when your Venus is in Libra, this shows that harmony around you is actually very important for your emotional state, or at least your feelings of comfort, your feelings of enjoyment in the world, because Venus shows us what we enjoy. This is the more sensual side of life. So experiences that we're drawn to, and art, music, beauty, but Libra really has a strong tie to social connections and to relationships. This is a naturally very romantic placement, and it indicates a strong sense of grace and natural beauty. Like, no matter what you look like, the way that you present yourself energetically and the work that you put into your presentation comes across harmoniously, or that is a really good thing to try to embody. Because when we're embodying our Venus sign, then we are really in the attractive energy of Venus. We're bringing things to us. We're finding more things that we're going to enjoy, and we're attracting the people that are going to align with us. So of course you're gonna have so many different placements. Everyone has a totally unique natal chart. So what applies to you is going to be dependent on your own specific makeup of energies. But just having your Venus in Libra shows that you have a strong talent for making things nicer, making things more pleasing to the eye, and of course being drawn to those things. So aesthetically, Venus is more like nice fabrics, good looking choices when it comes to how you dress yourself, how you decorate, the art that you're drawn to. It's kind of classic. This is naturally artistic, naturally having a strong sense of proportion and balance, a natural understanding of like the balance of shadow and light and composition. This can come with artistic talent, and if you've never explored that, it could be something fun, because I feel like the biggest focus here is on presentation in general and putting a lot of care into all aspects, whether that is setting something up, or like even packaging something, or in a more social setting, coordinating things. You have a natural eye for what's going to work and a sense for what's going to please not everybody, but the general population. And I do associate this with like softer colors and materials that are more delicate, and especially florals, because flowers are just naturally pretty, okay? Flowers are like nature's decoration, and I clearly have a bias here, but the harmony between, like, you know, whatever color palette you're working with, you're likely very good at taking what you've got and making the best out of it, visually, aesthetically. So the more you can do to focus on environmental harmony, harmony within your own presentation, this can actually be comforting. And I don't want to say like the better you look, the better you feel, but that could actually be true here. So it's pretty obvious that in the challenges, there's probably going to be something about perfectionism or an excessive attention to your appearance, or the appearance of what it is you're producing, what it is you're presenting to people. Whether this is your work or your relationship with other people, you want it to be nice and you want it to be well received. This reception is so incredibly important when it comes to Libra energy. So getting into values and self-worth when it comes to Venus in Libra, I mentioned that you're likely very skilled when it comes to curating experiences for people, whether that is visual or like a gathering, some sort of event. You have a natural talent for designing things in a way that's going to appeal to people. So trusting your taste and your sense of what's going to work and what's not can be an important thing to do. And of course, major values of Libra are fairness, equality, justice. So situations where you can help other people, compromise. Cooperation is something really great for this placement because you're working with people, you're helping them to get along. This is even great for diplomacy and just smoothing over tension in general, because tension is uncomfortable with personal Libra placements. Because the thing is that you prioritize fairness so much that when other people are not meeting you where you deserve, they're not giving back equally, they're not recognizing your effort and reciprocating, that can actually be really disappointing because you really value your relationships with people, you value what you have to offer, and you value being a supportive person, being well liked even. So this is where things get a little bit complicated because ultimately not everyone is going to share your values, and when it comes to something so significant as our dynamics between us and other people, there can be so much frustration when it feels like somebody is not doing their part, like they're not seeing things through the same lens of equality that you are, because it's only fair. It makes sense to be this way. Not everybody shares this, and accepting that can actually give you a lot of peace, because peace is important here too. What is the point of creating harmony if not to give peace to yourself and to others around you? But it's always important to recognize that not everybody thinks the same way we do, and that's okay. Just letting it be rather than letting it bottle up is always going to be a better idea. And when I say letting it be, I don't necessarily mean allow it. Confrontation, something that can be very difficult for Libra energy, is sometimes the answer. And the thing is that you likely handle confrontation so much better than the average person, even though this is such a conflict-averse placement. So taking your ability to work with people and using it when there is actually a problem, this is the ideal way to use the energy. And that might seem like I'm talking about smoothing things out between other people and helping them reach an agreement, but no, this is very importantly also including yourself. Even if it's just between you and another person, Venus in Libra really, really, really wants that peace and that harmony. And sometimes bringing up your own needs or a valid point that you might have can seem like it's going to disrupt the peace. But when you have your own internal sense of everything is fine, that's when you're at your best. And if you have the power to change something that doesn't feel like it's okay, like it really needs some work, it's super important to take your power in this situation and work through it. This is truly where you shine. But sometimes Libra energy can feel like if I'm not perfectly what they're expecting me to be, then there's something wrong with that. But there's not. You don't owe anybody to meet their expectations. But sometimes this placement can feel like if I can, then I should. So biggest thing here is when it comes to that focus on fairness, always make sure you're being fair to yourself as well, because you're likely the sort of person who is naturally going to prioritize fairness, even if the fairness is not putting yourself in the equation. So always make sure that you're a part of it. Even if there are 3 people, if you're looking at the other 2 and trying to make everything like, I see their side, I see their side, let's meet in the middle. Look at your side too. That's true equality, and that's what this sign exists here for. But sometimes when it comes to self-worth, it can feel like our relationships, maybe being in a relationship or maybe our group of important people to us, are that validation that we need. So making sure that you're also getting validation from yourself. You're doing things that you enjoy. You're putting your energy into the things that you want to grow. This tells yourself, I'm loved, I love me, and the things that I care about are worth paying attention to, rather than getting validation through other people appreciating and loving you, because that's wonderful and that's something that you could really desire strongly and something that is very fulfilling. But we always need to get love from ourselves first in order to feel whole and complete in a relationship. Because the more insecure you are within a relationship, the more likely you might be to overgive or to focus too strongly on your partner's needs and neglect your own, because that feeling of imbalance, it's like, something's not right within me, I'd better make sure that my partner's okay. It's important to focus on yourself. And since I'm talking about this, I guess I'm getting into love and relationships. So the most important thing in relationships is that they are equal and mutually fulfilling, that you feel just as fulfilled, because you have so much love to give. You are a natural in relationships. You're likely a natural romantic. You're really good at making your partner feel seen and loved and those little gestures, but you want those little gestures too. So make sure that you've got somebody who is actually willing to do all of the little extra things that you would do for them. It needs to feel like it's not a one-way street. That balance of balancing balance itself can actually be harder than it looks, especially if it comes naturally to you. I don't know if that made sense, but if it did, you get it. So even when it comes to value and self-worth again, your kindness, your loving nature is something that is highly valuable about you. And the more that you really embrace that and appreciate that about yourselves, regardless of what's happening outside of you, you can have somebody who's not appreciating you, and you can still appreciate yourself for even putting forth the effort, having that sense of care for them. Because this is also a very gracious placement, giving others grace. So it's very important that you give yourself the grace that you're willing to give other people. You probably let a lot of things slide that you wouldn't actually expect someone else to put up with. So just consider if the people around you are doing things that you actually find upsetting, but you're not saying anything about it, and yet you're being hard on yourself for not being perfect for them, like, just evaluate the situation and make sure that everything is actually fair, and that it's not just that you feel like there's something wrong with you because you're not giving enough, but in reality you're actually not getting enough or not asking for enough. That's the big thing here, is asking, making your needs known, and not bottling things up, and especially not ignoring deeper issues, because the more we try to cover something up, the harder it is to get to when we're actually trying to get there. So just be aware if you're hiding anything that you just don't want to deal with, hiding from yourself more than hiding from another person, because sometimes we can dislike confrontation so much that we suppress what really needs to be said. And to be in the natural flow of things, to actually achieve true harmony, we need to be at peace within ourselves. So this placement really does tend to love being in relationships. You can feel stronger and more complete when you're with another person and living a life together, sharing everything, feeling like a real unit. The strength of your relationship can really correlate with your own internal feelings of strength, for better or for worse, but you do have a natural skill at keeping the relationship going strong. Your attentiveness to your partner's needs is likely something that they really appreciate, but to direct that inwards and also be attentive to your own needs, that can also make you feel like you're a valued part of the relationship. And when it comes to conflict within the relationship, you're likely really great at resolving it, because you can be hyper aware of tensions, of even your partner's feelings when they're not saying anything, which could cause you to feel like you're doing something wrong. But the ultimate goal here is just to make sure that everybody's happy. And you're likely very attracted to beauty, but not necessarily just physical beauty. This is beauty in all aspects. People who are kind, people who are intelligent, people you feel a mental connection with. Libra is an air sign, so having that mental connection and that social connection can be very important here too. Like having a partner that has the same sort of social life as you. If you prioritize going out, then somebody who also likes going out. With such a romantic placement, just think about how many people there are. There are so many people, and it is absolutely likely that there's going to be somebody who really checks all of those marks for you. Or even if they're a very different person from you, you feel that sense of peace with them. Peaceful relationships are very important with this placement. And relationships are not always romantic. But this can even be a placement where you might look at people as romantic potential very naturally, automatically even. Say if you're not in a relationship, every new person that you meet that seems viable, you might start thinking about it. You might start even fantasizing about a potential relationship with them. It just shows how important that romantic connection is for you. But it is important to make sure that when it comes to a fantasy version of someone and the real version of someone, you are being totally honest about who they really are versus who you might want them to be, because sometimes that avoidance of conflict can even lead to mentally tricking yourself into thinking that a relationship that you're in is better than it really is, just so you don't have to break up with them. Because breakups are hard for anybody, but for Libra, who truly wants the best for everybody around them, it can be something that you really put off for a long time. You can take the opportunity to really take your time when it comes to getting into relationships, because this can indicate going in and out of relationships maybe more quickly than you should. And I'm not one to judge when you should or shouldn't get into a relationship. I just mean for thinking into the future. And even if you really want to be with someone now, it could be better to delay it just to get to know them better. And then you can prevent a potential breakup if they end up being a totally different person than you expected them to be. But ultimately, when it comes to love, it's all about that balance. It's all about making sure that you are receiving what you need to, because I know you're going to be giving. Assert your needs and make sure that your partner actually aligns with the sort of person that you can see yourself with. Because people can say that Libra is an unfaithful sign, but I truly believe that the only times that someone would be unfaithful is when they're not feeling fulfilled in their relationship. But in a loving relationship that's going well, you are incredibly loyal. It is your priority. So it's all just about being honest with yourself and honest with the people around you. Because when it comes to honesty, it's all white lies with Libra, wanting to make sure that people are not hurt by what you say. So maybe softening it a little bit, or maybe avoiding saying it entirely. But truth is very important, and I promise that you're better at addressing things and smoothing things over than you could ever imagine. Just energetically, the way that you come across, there is care there, there's love, just human to human, recognizing our humanity, recognizing that everyone has needs and desires and similarities and differences. So when we're upfront about all of that, it's easier to organize it and who's really going to be a good match for you. And this applies to friendships as well. This applies to all close relationships, all committed, important relationships. If you need something, speak up. So challenges and growth opportunities. Obviously, I've covered a lot of this, but sometimes this placement can have an over-reliance on external validation, whether this is doing certain things, presenting yourself in a certain way to get a certain kind of attention because it makes you feel better about yourself. Just recognize, what are you not giving yourself that makes you feel like you need that if it feels unhealthy? Absolutely nothing wrong with seeking external validation. Everybody wants to be told that people like them. Everyone wants to hear good things about themselves, but if it's coming from a place of insecurity, you could have unmet needs, whether that is something you're not giving yourself or something that you're not asking for. Because Venus kind of represents our needs, and even if it's not life or death, like a literal need, wanting something, there's nothing wrong with that. Our wants are valid and important because they lead us to the things that are for us, that are aligned with our energy, so they're very important to validate. And feeling incomplete in some way, there could even be the feeling that you need someone else to complete you, when in reality, you're just ignoring something about yourself that really wants to be seen. It's just a potential. And then, like I've talked about that, fear of confrontation, aversion to confrontation can lead to not asserting your needs, and this can lead to resentment because we're suppressing things, we're ignoring desires, and maybe feeling underappreciated. Conflict can be seen as ugly, and Libra doesn't like to be ugly. Libra doesn't like to do things that can be seen as breaking up the peace, conflict. breaking the status quo. Sometimes even doing something unexpected can actually feel upsetting for Libra energy, just the potential of that. So it's very important to recognize that you don't need to be perfect. People don't need to see you as perfect. You're never, ever, ever, ever going to be able to please every single person. Everyone has different tastes, they have different things that they like, and they just are different people, and we can't possibly be aligned with everyone. But I know what it feels like to want that. Of course, everybody wants to be liked by everyone. That's what I said before, but it's just not possible. What you really want to try to achieve is genuinely liking and loving yourself. And since this is such a relationship-oriented placement, making sure that the people who are the closest to you and the most important to you know what to do in order to make you feel appreciated. We can't expect people to be what they don't even know that they need to be in the first place, you know? So these high standards, they are usually towards yourself, but they can also be for your environment or for really anything. So taking these high standards, it is not at all a bad thing. This adds to your talent and your overall value, your ability to see quality. But sometimes not everything is going to be perfect, and sometimes we need to accept lower quality things than we might want for all sorts of different reasons. Everybody would probably love to have all sorts of luxury experiences, but it's just not feasible. So doing the best with what you have, and say if someone else were to present something to you, even if it doesn't appeal to you on an aesthetic level, consider their intention, consider the thought and feelings behind it. You're likely not the sort of person who's gonna receive a gift and be like, I hate this, this is awful. But I'm not saying you need to tell someone, I'm not at all saying that you don't need to tell people straight up that you hate something. Obviously, this is another balance situation where you're assessing, okay, their intent was good, we just have different tastes. Sometimes that can be the solution, just recognizing that you have different tastes. But sometimes it can actually be upsetting when you receive something that you really don't like and you're like, why would you think that I like this? Because it's so ugly. This is not something I plan on talking about, but just if you relate to that, I guess it came up. So 2 more things, okay? Trying to manage other people's feelings because you feel responsible for them, especially if they're having negative feelings. Be very aware of what the truth of the situation is. If somebody is upset and they're around you, it does not necessarily mean that it's you that's causing it, and it doesn't necessarily mean that it needs to be you to fix it. So being very clear on all of that. I know that it can feel really upsetting when someone around you is upset. It can feel like you need to be the one to fix it. But if it has nothing to do with you, of course you can comfort the person, you can get involved in whatever way, but don't put that responsibility on yourself if you really had nothing to do with it. Just being around somebody who's upset doesn't mean that you've failed. It doesn't mean that you're doing anything wrong, that you haven't done enough for them, because it's usually something entirely separate from you. And last thing, indecisiveness. So when it comes to Venus, this is the things that we value, and sometimes it can be hard to even select one value over another because you can see the merits of both. Libra is so fair. It's just naturally such a fair sign. It wants to weigh out everything. It wants to look this way and that way and be like, okay, well, where can we meet in the middle? Or I like this one better for these reasons, like with a lot of thought put into it. But actually being able to arrive at that decision can be hard sometimes. Not because you're even lying to yourself, but sometimes because you just like both. And for this, I'm more acknowledging it than I'm offering advice, because I think this is another thing where it's really down to the specific situation. But sometimes we just need to make a choice. Sometimes it's easier to just make a choice. And Libra energy tends to come with being the person who just says sure to things because they're fine with that. Yeah, that's fine. But sometimes people want to know, okay, but how do you feel? What do you actually want to do? What would be your first choice? Sometimes we can just go with the flow without really putting our input into it, because it can actually feel vulnerable sometimes to actually give our input. Because what if somebody really strongly disagrees? Or what if somebody judges us because of that and now thinks that, like, all these different things, the overthinking here can absolutely be present with this placement. So don't feel like you have to hold your opinion back or like you always have to go along with other people. But I'm also acknowledging sometimes it really is hard to make a decision. Like, sometimes both options really do look good. But maybe in those situations, like a coin flip or something, finding ways to help with indecisiveness, sometimes even if we do the coin flip and we get the one that we didn't really want quite as much, then that lets us know, okay, well then do the other one. So that's what I have to say with this placement. It's a really fascinating one, even though on the surface it seems like, yeah, Venus, Libra, they're very similar. There's not much to say, but I have a lot to say. So if you have this placement, or if you don't have this placement, if you just want to tell me something, I'm very curious about what you'd like to say about it. Do you relate? Do you not relate at all? Just let me know. So thank you so much for watching my video. I really, really, really appreciate every single one of you, and I love you. Bye.